Today I want to talk about updating the data in your table. All we have right now are 3 rows, and each row says hello world with its rows indexed after. So what would be more interesting if we could... Today I want to show you how you can update your data so that it can show different things at different times. The first thing we're going to do is change our cell content so that it's not just saying hello world, because this is static, and very rarely do you ever have static data like this in your app, or at least in tables. Usually you're referencing some data, either from the server or locally, but very, very rarely is it ever just something like this. So the first thing we're going to do is make a little local array that we can reference for our data. So var names equals, and then we'll open bracket and we'll say Adam, and then we'll say Byron, and then we'll say Curtis. And then we want these names to show up in each row of our table. So the first thing we're going to do here is say, instead of just returning 3, we're going to say return names dot count. If I can type, there we go. Now there's only 3, and I had 3 there, so it would have worked fine. But what if I added more names later? Then I'd have to make sure, if I kept 3, I'd have to come back and make sure that I'd update it. This way, no matter how many names I add, this function will return the right number. So here, instead of showing the static text, I'm going to show the name from the array at this row. So it seems a little bit complicated. It's not really that difficult. Basically, all I'm going to do is say names and then open bracket and then put index path dot row. And now whatever row I'm on, that's the name that will show up here. So if it's row 0, it'll be Adam. If it's row 1, it's Byron. If it's row 2, it's Curtis. So if I run this, that's what we should see. Excellent. Now we have Adam, Byron, and Curtis instead of hello world. Now let's say this was like a class role and one of the students doesn't like being called by their given name. They actually like being called by their nickname or something different. So now let's talk about updating this list. And to do that, we're going to start by just clicking on these cells and have it update. And what we'll do is we'll start by just adding a little text every time we click on this cell. So for example, right now we have it set up where if we select it like that, we get our little debug message at the bottom that says you clicked row 0, and then you clicked row 1, and you clicked row 2. So we're going to change this a little bit so that it does something to the data, so that it changes the data, and then that change is reflected in the table. So all I need to do for this is we'll go ahead and just remove this print statement for now. It's not really that important anymore. And instead I'm going to say names index path dot row. This is telling us which row is clicked, equals, and I'm just going to take this same value here, plus, and I'm going to add an exclamation point. So every time I click it, it should add an exclamation point. Now, this alone won't actually do anything different. When I click on this, I'm changing the data, but you'll notice the table's not updating at all. All we need to do is tell the table to reload its data. And the function you call to do that is TableView.reload data, just like that. Now, if we run this, what we should be able to do is every time I click on any of these names, it'll update. There we go. So we get this little tally basically of the cells. You'll also notice that the select didn't stick. It didn't stay on the name. So before it would you click it and it'd stay like this, but now it goes away. And that's because I've reloaded the data. And when you reload the data, all of those temporary variables get reset. So when I click, it says you're selected. And then when I let go, it's still selected, but then it reloads the data, which gets rid of that selection state. So that's really cool, but still not super helpful. What if we wanted to update these names? So that instead of Adam, we had Alice. Instead of Byron, we could say Bob. Instead of Curtis, we could say Carly. Well, that's not too bad either. And we're going to get a little bit into something that's not really related to table views, but it's just a good thing to know. And that is alert view controller. So we're going to take all this out and we're going to create a UI alert controller, which is basically a little dialog that'll let us type in some text, and then we can use that text to update our names. So first I'm going to make an alert controller. And it's called UI alert controller, and it takes a few things. First, a title, we'll say change name. Don't need a message. And preferred style, you either have action sheet or alert. We want an alert in this case. And then we want this alert to have a text field. All I need to do there is say alert controller dot add text field. And that's it. We don't need this configuration handler there. So we're just going to say nil there. In fact, you don't even need this. So we're just going to get rid of it. And now we need a button that we can say, okay, or, change. And so we'll say var submit. And actually, this can be a let. Actually, this can be a let too. We might as well just make them lets because they're not going to change in the future. So let submit equals UI alert action title change style default handler. And this handler we want. So all we're going to say here is when the person hits this button, we're going to grab the text field. We're going to assume there's one. So if let text field equals first, if there's one in there, and there should only be one because we only added one, then we say names. We're going to have to say self because we're inside of a closure. Index, self.names. There we go. Index path dot row equals text field dot text. Now it's going to get mad at me because the text field dot text is an optional, so it's not always going to be in there. And so just in case it's not, we're just going to say no name. After all this is done, once we update our data, our array, then we just tell the table to reload data. Now we add this button to our alert controller, and then we present the alert controller. So not too bad. And now when we run it and we click on one of these, so it's Atom, we get this nice little dialog that says change name, and we'll say Alice change. So it changed your data and then it told the table to reload, and now we see Alice. I can go Byron and say Bob change. I can click on Curtis and I can say Carly change. And there we go. So now our table uses dynamic data that we can change. And anytime we want to update our data to show it to the user, we just tell the table view, reload your data, and it does it for us. I hope this is helpful. I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you next time.